Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WP Watercooler, episode number 218. Today's topic is tying it all together, processes for your WordPress-powered business. Let's go around the room real quick and get everyone introduced. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Brian Hogg from Hamilton, help run the WordPress stuff in the area. I've got a couple of premium plugins and a course I'm working on making premium plugins with this cool mic.
Awesome. Good job. How about you, George?
Hi, I'm George Stefanos. I work at Jetpack doing automatic stuff. Wait, other way around, flip that. And we apologize in advance for stay today.
Nice. Boss.
What? Is it Vans?
So my name is Russ. I work at Web Dev Studios. I have a bunch of plugins as well. And I like doing stuff with WordPress. And I like M&Ms.
Nice. Good job. What about you, Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Weefald. I'm the production manager at Zeek Interactive, and I facilitate the OC WordPress design meetup first Monday of every month.
Good to have you on. How about you, Say?
My name is Say Reed, and I make WordPress, teach WordPress, love WordPress, preach WordPress at Say Reed Media on all the things, and I apologize in retrospect for George.
Nice. Oh, man. How about you, Steve?
I am Steve Zagan. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter and jasontucker.blog. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about businessy type stuff. Sarah and I were discussing last night what should we kind of talk about this topic and how should we kind of structure this thing. And Sarah, you were talking about like processes that you wanted to work through and for business running on WordPress websites, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it more in terms of like, the processes that we as developers might have, but, it seems like it turned more into, how other people can have processes that make their website work for them.
I think it's a fascinating topic because, I mean, there's many ways to do different things. And I think there's many different chapters, whether you're sending data to a CRM or you're doing internal reporting or you're putting two functions together. I mean, there's a number of worlds in which you can get lost in relatively quickly.
Yeah, I remember a WordCamp talk that I was watching probably about, well, it must have been like 4 or 5 years ago, where they were discussing, taking your new clients and getting them added into whatever CRM type thing you're using. The one that they were talking about at the time was using FreshBooks, but taking those and kind of importing those people into it, and then also kind of setting up a new invoice that you'll end up sending to the customer for like a deposit or for something like that. So, there's a bunch of ways to do this, and there's tons of plugins that are out there that do this as well. But I was hoping that maybe a few of you have done various businessy like processes using WordPress, or either for yourself or for your clients. Anything to add into that?
One of the coolest things I've ever seen at a WordCamp was somebody was using WordPress, and they were using it for an Indian casino. So every time that you put your card into one of the slot machines, it was actually making a call to the WordPress site, and it was like updating their points and like how many plays they had and stuff like that. Wow. They were actually using it to do that. Yeah, that was in 2011 at WordCamp that I saw that, and that's when I realized that WordPress can do a lot more than just blogging.
And they were tracking the points inside of the WordPress database.
Yeah, so what happens is there was an end call, so the person would slide their thing in, and their card would say you have 9,000 points or whatever, and then at the time that they were done, there'd be like a 20-minute delay, and then it would pull all that data in, and it would say, here's the points you have. And then
now, is this tracking the amount of money they've charged on their card, or is this just like reward points that they may get for playing?
It was like reward points. So you spend 20 bucks, you get 10 points, and then your card now has 10 points on it.
So there's a couple of considerations there. I mean, part of what we should talk about, or what we could talk about on this episode, is ways that those things are implemented, right? But what I'd worry about there is the security aspects of that system, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have.
Yeah, nobody wants to break into a casino.
Well, no, I mean,
So-
George sort of asked, are we dealing with money or are we dealing with points, right? Either way, right? There's hacks that you should be watching out for, right? There's incentive for people to hack reward points at a casino.
But at some point, that gets stored someplace. Is it WordPress or is it some other database? It could be.
I mean, it was just really cool to see, like, this is the process they were using for WordPress, that they were just pulling in this data to do this, and they were using this backend frame.
I'm not knocking the idea. I think it's a great idea. I just want our audience to be aware that there are security concerns when you can do it, and like Jason said, with any system that you're putting together.
Yeah, I mean, you could have some ridiculously old Fox Pro database that's running on some old computer sitting there, and that's the thing that all of the information for the entire business is running off of.
Oh shit!
Is that secure or not anymore? I don't know.
Is Fox Pro the name of the subscription you get when you subcribe to Fox News?
No, it's not.
No.
Sorry, Russ. It predates you. My apologies.
Yeah, Jason's definitely dating himself. By Fox
I
Pro.
remember that.
I have a client that is doing basically has a database system that they use for all of their invoicing, client CRM, client management. It's called 4D. Have many of you heard of 4D? Mm-hmm. So it's just this really powerful, big database system. So I've got, and this is actually something I set up quite some time ago, and that's why I've been like so anticipating the API for these folks, is basically having the database go directly from their 4D. So when they're creating invoices or whatever, and they have this whole process with their clients on this end, then they can actually just import that data that has been approved by their clients in this whole 4D process right over into their into posts and into content on their site. So they just hit a button in 4D and it auto posts into the WordPress database. So it really streamlines their process. It's pretty great.
That's awesome.
For getting stuff onto the site. That's not the same thing, obviously, as getting stuff off of the site, which I do with a ton of clients for client intake, particularly. I'm often working with businesses that, like need to give quotes or information. And obviously Gravity Forms is one of the most amazing plugins for that, because you can get so much data from that initial touch with the client and not have to have a bunch of back and forth. So especially from a small business perspective, the less like back and forth you have, the better. So if you can get all of that information in a nice form that everyone wants to fill out right up front, you have so much more data to go off of moving forward. And that just streamlines the whole business process.
Sure, but is any of that really specific to Gravity Forms, or is that like
just
Forms
rules.
or Contact Form 7 or
Jetpack's contact form to some extent?
I mean,
it doesn't have conditional.
I hate to be here to plug my stuff directly.
Put in some conditional logic or put in a contact form plus on that Jetpack, and we can have a conversation about Jetpack and Gravity Forms in the same sentence. Sure. But until that happens, the contact form in Jetpack it's just a contact form. It can't handle the majority of that larger client intake stuff.
Well, if that's what you need for the form, not everyone needs all that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. The basics, Jetpack context form, especially since you're probably going to have Jetpack anyway, it's a great place to start. It's just not as sexy. That's all.
So I mean, I think what we're talking about is that there's two ways. There's an in and an out, right? Whether you're bringing data in or you're sending data somewhere else. I mean, I think that's a lot of the functionality where people are trying to do. You're building a function or a process to say, get this clump of data. Now, what are we going to do with it? And you're either going to use it internally or send it somewhere else.
Yeah, like when Say was saying that, the client is going into their system and clicking a button there, which is then talking to the WordPress site. Usually we're thinking about this stuff in the terms of WordPress talking to the external, external service instead. So it's kind of cool to see that you can do it both ways, and you can also, make this work using, using the REST API, using webhooks. There's all sorts of ways of kind of making this stuff happen. It just depends on how that works and how that particular software works. In a recent Facebook post I was reading on one of our groups, somebody was talking about using Act and how they could have Act interact with WordPress. And
They also wanted to integrate with their Fox Pro database.
Visual Basic 2.
Act actually has an API that's associated with it that you can use, but you have to pay additional fees for it to be able to use that API. So
Act Pro.
Yeah, so you kind of want to look at this stuff and say, is this something that is this something I actually need, and can I get this to work using the plan that I'm using now, or am I going to have to upgrade?
Can I integrate with FileMaker?
Sure, you can.
Only FileMaker Pro.
Yeah, but FileMaker only goes to the media uploads.
Yes.
We need to talk about that on the Water Cooler Pro.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, our plus
Water
version.
Cooler
That
plus
would be awesome.
One of the
All hidden content value you never got here.
Water Cooler After Hours.
oh, you don't want to watch that.
No.
Yeah.
We're drunk enough as it is.
It's a dangerous place. A lot of my enterprise clients want integration with Salesforce, right? So that's what we would look at a lot. So when I was starting to talk about ways of doing this, sometimes there's a plugin for this. Sometimes there's a plugin that does part of the system, and sometimes you need to build a custom, right? And for that, you would use something like the Salesforce API to integrate with Salesforce.
Salesforce has actually done some impressive stuff with WordPress. They know that it's like a beginning point for so many people. So there are a lot of things that connect those up. I think they've done a good job making that happen.
Is there like a list of like the 3 biggest client things that people use? Like Salesforce is one. I think Basecamp is another. Is there like a list of like the 3 major things?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, right? So Salesforce is the ultimate enterprise CRM tool.
Yep.
I mean, that's what you like it or not. That's what our enterprise client uses Salesforce. Right?
Until you get to like what, 1 million or 10 million API requests, and then it's just like, oh, I want to buy more. Nope, can't buy anymore. So
there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, it really depends on the size and scale of business you're talking about. I know a lot of businesses that you run all their stuff through QuickBooks, and then they want QuickBooks to be able to integrate with their website e-commerce system.
Usually WooCommerce.
They just use Square for everything.
Yeah.
Actually, so QuickBooks is an interesting case because QuickBooks has a plugin in between usually the plugin that you're using and QuickBooks. It's like OEO QuickBooks or something, OBEP, I don't remember what it's called. But it's actually a really kind of complicated setup, which makes sense. Obviously, you're transmitting financial data that needs to be secure. But so it basically will connect, like for example, WooCommerce directly to QuickBooks. And so you can manage your inventory in QuickBooks, like if you have QuickBooks POS, and sync it with your online inventory so that it's always all in the same, at the same levels. But there is that kind of third-party plugin that you then have to string together. So it can start to get a little bit complicated when you get over to the QuickBooks side.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to bring it back a bit too. I mean, you don't need to do an integration just to improve your process by using WordPress. Like you can just have a plugin that's only on WordPress. It's not integrating with something. Like I did one for a sports league. So you could just create an account and then submit your scores, and then it would calculate the standings and then publish that as a page. Job done. Doesn't integrate with anything, but.
And Brian, I think that's a good comment, right? So you have to kind of look at what sort of data that you're trying to integrate, for lack of a better word, because you don't always need a full integration to do some of this stuff, right? And you don't always need real time, right? Some of this data can be synced, on a nightly basis, right? On a couple times a day, right? A lot of these things are built for enterprise real time data transfer, and you don't always need that. Well, again, it depends on the use case.
Especially when you're talking about like, okay, we're doing lead capturing, that kind of stuff probably should be real time, because again, if it takes you an hour to get to a client, they might have went to somewhere else. So
that's true.
That's a good reason to use real time. But when you're talking about like keeping things kind of in sync and keeping things like keeping a database or a repository of like copies of each other, you don't need real-time syncing and all this activation to go through, like you can do that in intervals.
And if the data is coming into WordPress directly via form or whatever, it's already there. So you're not even syncing anything.
The one place I've seen developers struggle with is when it comes to where users are stored, where contact information is stored, especially where logins are stored. So if you've got, say, WordPress that you're integrating with another external system and they've both got a login system or they both got contact information, that's where it can get tricky, right?
This is actually, that's, oh, go ahead.
And so what you have to determine in that case is where is the master set of data, right? So where is that being stored? Is it in WordPress or is it being driven from this external system? And it'll help you determine the level of integration that you need.
Yeah, Salesforce does that with because they don't have like the client end login, and so I'm actually working with the client right now to string together their actually Neon, which is a or it's not Neon, they're getting rid of Neon. I don't remember what it's called anymore. But anyway, they're connecting their WordPress member plugin with Salesforce. So it's actually WP. No, it's Member Pro. I'll look it up. I cannot remember at all. But it's basically connecting so that every time someone creates a member user on WordPress, it automatically will create a lead in Salesforce. And so the client is never going to actually, deal with their Salesforce stuff. That's all they're all on the WordPress side, but then all the data is automatically coming into Salesforce so that can be, dealt with as needed and whatnot. So it's Salesforce, again, is pretty cool with its integrations that it's got going on.
And if you just don't have the ability to do any of this stuff yourself and you feel that, you want to kind of, or at least try to figure this stuff out without having to do any programming, you have services like Zapier that you could use to do this stuff too, and have those zaps kind of trigger and connect those various pieces together as well.
Zap and IFTTT.
If this, then that.
What I liked about what Steve was saying is like I built a thing a while ago where for the mortgage site where you could potentially start a loan by filling out a Gravity form, and then it would pass over to the loan management system where we like pull documents and check bank statements and stuff. I actually had to pause that real-time stuff because we had to go in and verify data was actually how it was supposed to be spelled and stuff, because once you start a loan and if something is messed up, you have to create a new one if there's a period missing and stuff. So with real-time syncing, it's not always necessarily the best case. Like you need to run checks and validate your data first before you just go and pass it along.
Especially if it costs you money to process a lead.
Yeah.
I've worked with companies that do like mortgage refinance, get your home, like trying to find out the value of your home, and it would cost them maybe 2 cents per submission to just like query public databases and get like an estimate on a home's value. But if all you're getting is spam dummy data, you don't want to waste those 2 cents on these 20,000 calls that someone's dumping on your site.
Or I mean, like if you just have an open face form where anybody can sign up, you're going to have a lot of bots that are hitting that and just typing in whatever. And now you just paid $20 because someone spammed your site. Like you need to be, validating some data and not passing everything through.
Mm-hmm.
And like that gets tricky down the road, as your site grows in popularity and you start getting more hits, you need to really start factoring in, is this a genuine lead or not?
I thought the internet was trustworthy. Like everyone on the internet.
Always.
That's why CAPTCHAs exist. That's exactly why CAPTCHAs exist.
So I had a filter that said if they're coming from Amazon to my site, they're probably a good lead.
Obviously.
Also, people recommended this.
One of the other integrations that we've been playing with recently is Google Analytics. And I'm not just talking about adding a Google Analytics tag to track your traffic, right? There are much deeper integrations you can do with Google Analytics.
I mean, just event tags alone, like just seeing when a video was played, how long into the video it was paused or stuff. I mean, like that can get in depth pretty quick.
So Steve, are you talking e-commerce stuff?
No, a specific integration we did recently was to pull popular posts from Google Analytics, right? So that we're not, I find that the popular post plugins that are out there record too much data to the database, and it's too much. It actually adds some scalability issues to your site, and it also conflicts with caching. So what we did is rather than writing it to the database, we're pulling that data straight out of Google Analytics on an hourly basis to show a popular post sidebar widget.
There's one that'll grab it from
That's
Jetpack
cool.
as well. So,
Mhm.
so you're not
Jetpack
relying
has
on
that widget already built in, but yeah.
Yep.
So there's also the idea of running your CRM from within the site itself. I think, Brian, I think you were hitting on this a little earlier, is that you can actually, there are a bunch of CRM plugins for WordPress. And so there are some clients, and this, I think it's really important if you're going to run a lot of your business from your WordPress, you need to have a solid install. You should have something like WP Engine. If all of your business processes are within WordPress and on that server, then it needs to be extra protected.
Yep.
But
Your
there are
business is worth $25 a month, not $2.
right? Like it's at a certain point in time, it's like, how much is this worth to you? But so there's a lot of really cool CRMs that literally you just are managing through your site. Some of them take over and make the whole thing a CRM. Some of them are just like more typical plugins. But I think that is pretty cool too, because you can already manage your whole inventory. So if you're managing your whole inventory and all of your content, a lot of your marketing from your site, and then you're also managing your clients in there, then really the hub becomes WordPress. It becomes that install. And I think that can be really powerful.
And the thing to note there is you want to be, there's a lot of different technologies that are lumped under this header CRM, right? So CRM can mean many different things, and you really have to understand what kind of features you want from a CRM, right? Some of the ones that are built into WordPress are just a very basic lead tracking type of CRM, right? Some other ones that are more of a SaaS-based product can do full drip campaigns, right? And a lot of other stuff. So you just want to, you want to have certain, you want to define your goals for what you're trying to do with your CRM before you put it in place. And I say that because once you put it in place, and a couple of people have said this, and it takes off, it's difficult to switch at that point.
It is.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like, let's say you had 50 people sign up on version 1, and then version 2, you added more data. It's really hard to go add that data to those 50 people who signed up first, and getting them to resubmit the form is really hard to do.
I find that people are more than willing to come back and revisit and get more info. Yeah, that always happens.
I don't think any public-facing company wants to say, "Hey, we made a boo-boo, so can you please do this again?" Yeah,
that was our bad.
Hey, for whatever reason, can you just put your social into this again? That'd be great.
And your PIN code.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of processes that we're doing with like migration. So like we have a client where they put all their like recipes and nutrition facts and stuff into a third-party source, and then we're using a migration plugin to pull that down to create a post and assign that to like metadata and stuff. And that's one of those things where they have to get it right on their end, because we're pulling data from them, and if it's wrong, we have to delete and re-pull and do things again. And I think to Steve's point, once you get it in place once, and if it doesn't work, you can't just make it public. You got to get it right before you just release it.
Well, the problem is the switch. If you're going to switch platforms at some point, you're talking about a migration. Right? In any of these things that we're talking about, you're talking about a migration, which has varying degrees of difficulty.
Yeah.
I just silenced the room.
I think we're all thinking of our worst migration.
Let's spend the rest of the time watching the censored count from Sesame Street.
I think we were all waiting for you to continue and tell us about all of your terrible migration stories.
I had no point there.
So
or ever.
So I think one of the most popular forms of functionality people want is like sharing to social media, right? I mean, there's a number of different ways that you can do that, whether you use the social sharing in Jetpack or you use something like Social Warfare or something, both free plugins.
Social Warfare?
It's a great plugin.
I have not heard of that plugin yet. Wow.
Social Warfare is a great plugin. But I mean, I think when people who are not into like sending data from one place to another, that's one of the easiest places to start, right? You're sending data from your site over to a social media, and it pulls in all that data. So I mean, like from there, you can get crazy with just doing stuff like that.
I got to say, I think Social Warfare wins for the #1 best named plugin on the Codex.
Internet.
The ultimate social sharing arsenal for WordPress is their tagline. That's awesome.
I think that we talked a lot about all these different plugins, but we touched on both the Zaps and on If This Then That, but there really are some, if you go explore some of those kind of pre-made options in If This Then That, the recipes, or they're not calling them recipes anymore, they're calling them something else, but recipes and the Zaps, there is so much stuff for both porting data into your WordPress as content, but also pulling it out. And I think that really is, whether you're using a plugin or a service, that is one of the major strengths of WordPress, is that portability of the data. And that's one of the things that I think is woefully underused for a lot of users, because they don't understand that it can do that. They don't understand that they can automate their processes, that they can work in one place and send it out to their social media, like Russ was just saying, or to their different processes. So I think, and because there are so many different options available for doing that, it can be very confusing for users who are like, oh, I want to automate this thing, and then there's 30 plugins and 20 recipes. So
one of the things I wanted to say about social integration, right, especially with things like Facebook and...
You don't know how to socially integrate? Is
that's such a
integrating social functionality in your website, right?
Oh, okay.
Those APIs, Twitter and Facebook, change constantly, right?
Yeah, and they're always broken.
And plugins are typically behind, not always because it's their fault, just because they change so rapidly without notice sometimes. So it's something to be careful of, is if you install a plugin, it could just not function one day and could function the next day.
And there's two layers on that, because there's, first of all, the API changes, and then the plugin has to get updated, and then the user has to update the plugin, which is a little more stuff happening than just like with one of the Zaps or the ifs. If they
just
update
spit all
themselves.
over my monitor.
So, if the API changes, they will update those automatically. So to a certain degree, some of those Zaps and ifs are actually more sustainable in the long run than hooking a plugin up between them.
And that's always going to be the benefit of using a software as a service. SaaS.
A sassy if.
SaaS.
So now who's spitting on whose screen?
There's an If This and That applet is what they're called, where you can set up a thing where you can talk to Google. So you can say like, okay, Google, do something, and then turn on the lights, and that API changes almost daily. I had one working for 20 minutes, and then it changed again, and I had to go and reset it up. I think to say his point, it's making sure this is the direction you want to go before you dive in head first.
Well, I think
that's a good life lesson, actually.
Make sure you know where you're going before diving.
Make sure the APIs still work. Is that the life lesson right there?
Well, I think beyond applying that to life, this is something we hit on all the time in our water coolers. But for this specifically, when you're talking about these processes, whether it's automating inventory updates or sales leads or whatever it is, outlining the whole process, not just the website part, but the comprehensive part that includes the people and the manual actions, will really help you understand which parts you can actually automate. And maybe there's a plugin that does 3 of the processes instead of just 1 of the processes. So it's super important to understand the whole thing before finding a solution.
Wait, are you telling people to plan?
No, that's it's just
So at WordCamp Reno in 2013, Say and I both spoke about how you should build your house, kind of like building a WordPress site or vice versa. We spoke at the same time about the same topic.
And we used the same analogy.
Did you guys wear the same thing? Did you guys call each other?
Probably both wearing hoodies and jeans. That's what I would guess. That's when I discovered Russ and I were the same person, and it was a weird day.
Folks, that's
Wow,
about
look
it.
at
It's
the time.
11:30. Make sure
Not
you
sure
go
if
over
this-
to our website at WPwatercooler.com. Click on the links there to subscribe. If you enjoyed this content and you want to make sure that you're notified that the content is available for you, hit the little bell right next to the subscribe button.
What if
And
you
it'll
didn't
let you know.
enjoy the content?
And
You should
lastly,
do it
if
anyway,
you'd
just so
like
you
to
can
say
revel in
everything-
it.
Every time a bell rings, a podcast gets a subscriber.
If you like all this stuff, hit the little thumbs up button. We'd really appreciate it. Comments are appreciated. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Have a good